Hey guys, Srey here. So, as some of you may know, Kael'thas is getting quite a few changes to both his abilities and talents on the PTR. These changes are very significant and they change the way he is played, and they almost make him a new hero. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at his abilities and his talents independently and compare them to the live and PTR versions. So let's look at Flame Strike first. Verdant Spheres didn't get any changes. Flame Strike's damage overall has been reduced by about 10%. Both on the normal and empowered version. Living Bomb is where most of the changes are. Its default explosion radius has been increased by 10%, and it also has the Chain Bomb effect, which is Kael'thas' current level 13 talent. However, this Chain Bomb no longer affects anything besides heroes, so it only affects heroes. It doesn't affect buildings or minions or any kind of monsters like that. Additionally, Living Bomb can no longer be cast on targets that are already affected by Living Bomb, which means that you can no longer empower Living Bomb and empower the same target again to instantly spread the explosion. This is very significant and probably the biggest nerf to Kael'thas overall. So let's keep that in mind when we look at the rest of his talents. There's no other changes to Living Bomb. Gravity Lapse, the only change here is if you use the empowered the Verdant Spheres to empower Gravity Lapse, it increases the stun duration by 50%. So overall, he gets a nerf to his abilities, in my opinion. Flame Strike reduced damage. Gravity Lapse gets a bit of this increase in stun duration. However, Living Bomb is worse overall, I think, because you can no longer double tap Living Bomb to heroes. So let's look at the talents now. So if we look at level 1, the left side is live and the right side is the PTR version. So on the left side, the normal talent build that you're going to get is Mana Addict, Netherwind, Vision Bomb, Phoenix or Pyroblast, Chain Bomb, Arcane Barrier, and Arcane Power. The other talent build that you can go, or the other talents that could be good, would be Fel Infusion could be good, Gathering Power could be good sometimes. Nothing else at 7, so Pyroblast or Phoenix. Always Chain Bomb. You can get Backdraft at 16, and Steel Bolt to the Storm. So Kael'thas' current talent build is very standard and easy to understand. So let's compare exactly at each tier what you're benefiting and what you're losing. So Convection is a new talent, which is a quest talent. So once you hit heroes 20 times with Flame Strike, you gain 150 damage is how it can be summed up. If you die, or you'll lose your stacks before you hit 20 stacks, and you'll have to restart. So every time you hit a hero, you gain 5 damage, and it stacks. So it essentially gives you 150 extra damage on Flame Strike, which is good. But it can be difficult to achieve this. And it could be inconsistent. If we look at Fel Infusion, it's exactly the same, except it also increases your ability power by 5%, which is a nice small buff. It's not that significant, but it's a nice little buffer. Mana Addict got a huge buff. If you look at just the level 1 talent. But overall, I think this is a nerf to Kael'thas. So Mana Addict still increases your maximum mana by 15, as you can see. Here, every time you pick up a regeneration globe. However, additionally, once you collect 25 regeneration globes, you can activate Arcane Barrier, which was previously a level 16 talent. So Arcane Barrier here, you can see, it's exactly the same, except it's 100% of your maximum mana instead of 150%. The new Mana Addict is in Arcane Barrier is actually probably better. It frees up your level 16 to be a different talent, but you are giving up 50% of the mana shield. So I actually do think that Mana Addict is better when you combine the Arcane Barrier. But it's worth noting that you do lose some survivability. So what should you choose here? Well, these are actually all viable options. If you're going to go a Flame Strike build, I'd recommend Convection. but I think I'd still recommend going Mana Addict at level 1. At level 4, you'd pick up Netherwind, which significantly increases your ability to hit a Gravity Lapse. It increases the range and speed by 30%. Netherwind has been changed to only increase the range by 30%, so the speed stays the same. However, if you hit an enemy hero, you refund 85 mana, which is basically the entire cost of the ability. So if you hit Gravity Lapse, refund the mana. And note that this is if you hit an enemy hero, not every time you hit an enemy hero. So if you Verdant Spheres to hit multiple enemy heroes, you don't gain 3 times that amount of mana. This is the same thing for Energy Royal. If you hit an enemy hero, it reduces cooldown by 7 seconds. So it's not if every time you hit an enemy hero, you reduce the cooldown by 7 seconds. It's just if you hit a hero. And Mana Tap will refund about 4% of your max mana. So what should you take at this tier? I'd recommend Energy Royal every time. However, if you didn't take Mana Addict, an argument could be made for Netherwind. If you go Convection, you could get Netherwind. Or you could go Mana Addict. Mana Tap. If you don't go Mana Addict, you're probably going to need some more mana abilities. So you're probably going to need to take something other than Energy Royal at 4 if you don't go Mana Addict. Otherwise, you'll run out of mana later in the game. So I would take Energy Royal at tier 4 though. So if you compare this, so far, Kael'thas is, if you're just looking at his talents, he's I'd say probably a little bit stronger. But the Netherwind nerf, the change to Netherwind here, I think is pretty significant. I'd much rather have this Netherwind talent than Energy Royal. It makes Gravity Lapse significantly easier to hit and more effective. Alright, so at level 7 we have Fission Bomb, which increases the living bomb's explosion radius and damage by 30%. This is a huge talent for Kael'thas, especially once you get Chain Bomb, but this significantly increases living bomb's effectiveness. So if we compare this to what you get at level 7 on PTR, you have Flame Strike. When you hit 2 more heroes, you also deal 8% of their maximum health. That's good versus a lot of melee and tanks, but this is going to be a situational talent, so this could sometimes be good, but most of the time it's likely not going to be worth taking. Gravity Crush is essentially a vulnerable effect. So if you hit an enemy with Gravity Lapse, they take 25% increased damage from only you. This could be a good talent in some kind of Pyroblast burst build, but I think it's too situational and kind of too gimmicky and niche. So I would recommend taking Sunfire Enchantment. So at 7 you're taking Sunfire Enchantment, which you can also take on the live server. However, the PTR Sunfire Enchantment does reduce damage. So not only are you taking an inferior talent to live, instead of Fission Bomb you have to take Sunfire Enchantment, but Sunfire Enchantment is also nerfed from live server. So it's not, so 7 is definitely a nerf. 10 is exactly the same. So at 13, remember Chain Bomb is part of Kael'thas' kit, so you can choose a different talent. Pyromaniac was nerfed from 2 seconds to 1 second. So you can see here it's 2 seconds, and on PTR it's 1 second. Backdraft used to be a 16 talent, and it slowed by 50%. Now it's a 13 talent and slows by 30%. And Fission Bomb is exactly the same as this Fission Bomb, except worse in every way. So remember that it says 20% here, but Kael'thas' living bombs were increased in effectiveness by 10% explosion radius. So this puts Fission Bomb at exactly the same radius as it was before. However, it also does not increase your damage by 30%. So this is just an awful talent that I wouldn't recommend ever. So you basically have Pyromaniac or Backdraft. So normally here I would say Pyromaniac is the obvious answer. However, remember that you can no longer double up on Living Bomb, so you can no longer Verdant Spheres, Living Bomb a target. So this actually makes using your Living Bombs in fights somewhat difficult because you can't hit the same target twice. So you have to sometimes commit further into a fight to hit a different target with Living Bomb, and that can make it sometimes difficult to do damage because you'll have to overextend. So what I'm saying is you'll have so many abilities up from Pyromaniac that you won't actually be able to use them. This This will not always happen, but it's something you should keep in mind. The other option is backdraft, so 3% movement speed slow. So if we compare it 13, you're not gaining anything in 13. Like you already have Chain Bomb overall on the PTR. So you can get a new talent at 13. So this, if you're just looking at 13 talent on Kael'thas, it's kind of a buff, but overall it's a nerf if you're going up to this tier. So if we look at 13, compared PTR to live, Mana Addict is better on PTR. Energy Royal is worse than on live. 7 is obviously worse. You lose out on every way. 10 is the same, and on 13, you're gonna Living Bomb will also reduce the cooldown of your basic abilities by 1 second every time it ticks. However, Chain Bomb will no longer spread to minions or buildings. It'll only spread to heroes, and you can't double up on Living Bomb. So I think that just because of the Fission Bomb change and the fact that you can't double up on Living Bomb and it doesn't affect minions or buildings is a nerf. So if you just look at everything so far, Kael'thas is weaker. Okay, the Mana Addict change and the energy royal change are not nearly as effective enough to oversee the massive change to Chain Bomb overall. So far, Kael'thas is worse. Okay, you can argue that Living Bomb spreads with Chain Bomb effectively from level 1, but the fact that you can't double up is a huge nerf. You lose a lot of damage, it's much harder to gank, it's a lot harder to burst heroes, and additionally, Flame Strike loses 10% of its damage. So Kael'thas is weaker overall. I don't know how you could argue that Kael'thas is stronger on PTR than he is on live once you hit level 13. Next we'll look at level 16. So 16 is where the PTR version of KT gets a lot stronger. Not stronger than live, but he gains a significant buff in strength. So on the live server, you take Arcane Barrier most of the time. However, Backdraft could be taken sometimes. So if you're comparing Arcane Barrier on live compared to PTR, you don't have to take anything. You don't have to take Arcane Barrier on PTR because you get it at level 1, or a nerfed version of it. So you can take a whole new talent at 16. So Fury of the Sunwell is exactly the same as the live version, except the tooltip is bugged here. So it actually explodes 0.5 second less, so it's faster. So here you can see it says 1 second later, so this should be 0.5, but here it says 1.5. But Fury of the Sunwell did get a buff overall. It's not nerfed. It should be down a second, not up a second. Then we have a whole new talent called Sun King's Fury, which basically makes your auto attacks do a Sunfire enchantment kind of buff every time you attack a target with Living Bomb on them. So if you compare the damage to Sunfire enchantment, it does a little bit more damage, but it's on every auto and it stacks with Sunfire enchantment. So you're going to be doing an insane amount of damage with auto attacks with Sun King's Fury to all targets that are affected by Living Bomb, which should be whatever you're attacking, because it's so easy to proc Living Bomb now, because you can't double up on it, so there's going to be more uptime on it, but that doesn't necessarily mean you'll be doing more damage, but there'll be a lot of uptime on Living Bomb. So your auto attacks are going to be doing an insane amount with Sunfire enchantment and Sun King's Fury if you get this talent. Twin Spheres basically gives your Verdant Spheres a second charge. This is really bad. It does almost nothing. Right now it's already difficult. Not difficult, but there's not really a lot of reasons to use Verdant Spheres. Previously, you'd always want to use Verdant Spheres on Living Bomb because you could double up on it and spread it really easily. However, now you can't double up on Living Bomb, so Verdant Spheres isn't useless, but it loses a lot of its effectiveness. So you'll usually have it up if you want it available. So the double charge here doesn't really do anything. So it's between Fury of the Sunwell and Sun King's Fury. Now I'd always recommend going Sun King's Fury. The damage it deals is absurd. However, you can go Fury of the Sunwell if you go some kind of Flame Strike build, which I'll show after. So finally we have level 20. So the live version of Kael'thas always goes Bolt of the Storm, and the PTR version, well, that's kind of a mishmash because they've removed Bolt of the Storm and instead given you this new talent called Master of Flames. So living bombs spread from explosions can now also spread living bombs. So it will constantly spread to heroes when they're hit, regardless of if they've already been hit by the same living bomb. So previously, if you living bomb a target and that living bomb spreads chain bomb via chain bomb to another target, the target that was hit by the chain bomb can no longer spread the living bomb to any other to the target that was just hit or to any other targets. But with this talent, the living bomb will continuously spread until it can't hit a hero. So you may think, wow, that's really, really good. But in fact, it's not, because living bomb and chain bomb can now only affect heroes. So it's much more difficult to spread it because it no longer affects minions, summons, structures, monsters, anything. You can only spread via heroes, and you're not going to get this radius increase. So you have a 20%. So instead of having a 30% increase explosion radius, you now have a 10% increase explosion radius, unless you go this vision bomb talent, which is, like I said, awful. So this talent is actually bad, and you might, get 1 or 2 spreads per fight extra, which is very underwhelming. I could see this being effective at low levels of play, but at high levels or like even medium levels, it's so obvious to not spread, and I don't see this ever working out. So what should you get at 20? Well, honestly, everything at level 20 is kind of underwhelming. Arcane Power did get buffed from a 5-second duration to a 10-second duration, but it's really not that effective. I'd recommend just going Phoenix if you go the Phoenix upgrade Rebirth if you go Phoenix, and if you go Pyroblast, probably just Arcane Power, because 50% more damage on Pyroblast is effective. Presence of Mind isn't really worth it. You'll almost never hit more than 1 target with it because people spread, even with the increased radius. So it's basically only going to reduce the cooldown of Pyroblast by 25 seconds. So you have the option of 25-second lower cooldown on Pyroblast or 15% more damage and mana when you use it. And it's also 15% more damage on other abilities that you have. So I'd recommend Arcane Power if you go Pyroblast, and Rebirth if you go Phoenix. Alright, so the other build you can go in Kael'thas is Convection. Is the Flame Strike Convection build. So you go Convection, Burned Flesh, and Fury of the Sunwell. So this build is really good versus lots of melee heroes, because melee heroes will stack together a lot more effectively than ranged heroes. In addition, ranged heroes are much harder to hit for Kael'thas because they're going to be farther away from the front line, which Kael'thas does not want to extend past. So the melee heroes on the enemy team will all be in the front line, and if they have 2, 3, 4 heroes that are melee, it's going to be very easy to hit Flame Strike. This build is actually very effective. I think that this build is arguably better than the... If you go the cube build here with Flame Strike, it's arguably better than the live server of Kael'thas versus melee heroes, because of how many Flame Strike you're gonna be able to get Flame Strike off to do a lot of damage with the maximum health, especially with Fury of the Sunwell. So you could potentially do 16% max health. But the Living Bomb, Chain Bomb is still really good versus melee on live. So let's look at all of his abilities now and his talents and see if it's a buff or a nerf overall. So live Kael'thas, he does 10% more damage if we compare him to PTR. So he does 10% more damage on Flame Strike, about. Chain Bomb spreads infinitely. So we're looking at the level 20 version of Kael'thas. Living Bomb, Chain Bomb spreads to all buildings and structures and minions. He has Bolt of the Storm at 20. He has Arcane Barrier. He has the 150% version of Arcane Barrier. Vision Bomb significantly increases the damage and radius of his Living Bombs. He can also, his Netherwind is quicker, and he can use Netherwind, he can double up on Living Bomb. So if we compare this to the PTR version of Kael'thas, um, the PTR version of Kael'thas at level 20 no longer has Bolt of the Storm. Arcane Barrier is weaker. Chain Bomb no longer spreads to heroes, or anything other than heroes, sorry. So it doesn't spread to minions or structures, which is a huge nerf to pushing. Gravity Lapse has a 30% shorter range and speed. However, Kael'thas' auto attacks are significantly stronger with Sun King's Fury and Sunfire Enchantment. And in addition, Energy Royal will do will reduce the cooldown of Gravity Lapse, and the Verdant Sphere's Gravity Lapse increases its stun duration by 50%. Finally, Pyromaniac will reduce your ability cooldowns by 1 second. So in a team fight, what it's going to look like for the PTR Kael'thas is you're going to be using Living Bomb, the normal Living Bomb, not empowered, and then you're going to be auto-attacking those heroes. You're going to be trying to stun with Energy Royal and Gravity Lapse, and you're going to be using Verdant Spheres on probably Gravity Lapse. You're probably just going to use normal Flame Strikes, and you're just going to be throwing out Phoenix really early so that you can have a longer duration with it, and you're going to basically be an auto-attack hero with the new Kael'thas. I feel that Blizzard could have done a lot more with Kael'thas, in that he could have, been a really cool fire mage with all these different abilities. Instead, they just make him a really boring auto-attack hero. I see what they were trying to do here by moving Chain Bomb to part of his kit, so that he would have more options in terms of talents. But I mean, if you look at how many talents he actually has, they removed 1, 2, 3, 4 talents. So he has 4 less talents to choose from than he did previously, which could be argued that now he actually has less options. But they've made it so each tier could be more debatable in terms of what you pick, except Twin Spheres, which is horrible, Vision Bomb, which is horrible, Master Flames, which is horrible, Mana Tap, which is horrible. So there's a lot of options here which you just never take. So overall, do I think it's a buff or a nerf to Kael'thas? I think it's a nerf once you get to level 20. There's some parts that are obviously better and some parts that are worse, but I'd much rather play on the live version of Kael'thas than the PTR version. If you're just looking at if you're looking at potential damage output for live or for PTR Kael'thas, I think he probably does more damage because of the auto attacks. However, he's very vulnerable using the auto attack build because obviously you have to be within range of auto attacks. Now, auto attacks are the same range as Living Bomb, or about the same range. However, to use the Living Bomb, Chain Bomb build on live, all you have to do is go up to within range of the enemy team and Chain Bomb, just Living Bomb, and leave. Whereas on the PTR, you have to stay within auto attack range to continuously output damage. So I mean, obviously Blizzard wanted to make it so that Kael'thas is more punishing. However, I think that they also just outright nerfed him by doing that. I would have rather have seen him be more spell based rather than auto attack based. Again, you can go Power Blast here instead and get Arcane Power. But I mean, this has nothing to do with the live version versus PTR version. I think right now people are kind of enamored with the possibility of different builds, and they're like, oh wow, you can Kael'thas says Chain Bomb at level 1 effectively. But they're not looking at all the drawbacks. What I think Blizzard should do to kind of make Kael'thas a good hero with the new changes is all they need to do, I think, is change Living Bomb so that you can Verdant Spheres Living Bomb a target twice. So I think that you should be able to apply Living Bomb to a target that already is affected by Living Bomb, which is how it is on live. And I think if they did that, he'd be the same, if not better. However, without that change, I can't understate how big of a nerf that is. I think he'd be okay, even with Living Bomb and Chain Bomb not affecting minions and structures and only affecting heroes. I think if they made it so that you could double Living Bomb, he'd be perfectly fine. But as it stands now, where you can't, I see Kael'thas just being a worse version of how he is on live. So I hope that helped you guys out, and I will talk to you guys next time. Peace.
Today I'm going to be doing a patch note breakdown. Today we have a really big patch. Probably the biggest patch Heroes have seen in a long time. Might even be bigger than the scaling changes with how some of these changes are working.